Next, I have here a standard size and shape paper clip and two papers that I want to fasten together. The first step will be to check for the light source. Typically, my projects will have a light source coming from the top left. And if I look at this paper clip, the light source seems to be coming from the top right. So in order to make it realistic, I will have to flip it. And I will go through Image, Flip, Horizontal. Now my paper clip is in the correct direction. If you want to have your paper clip straight, that is fine, but you might want to have it slightly angled. If that's the case, you can angle it now so that all the following steps will be consistent. I want to have this small piece, the small loop, behind the paper, while the larger loop will be in the front. I could choose the other way around. Both are valid. So before we actually trim our paper clip, I want to add a drop shadow. So using the regular drop shadow, I will add a thin shadow. Since it's a paper clip, it's going to be very close to the paper. So if I had a larger shadow, it would look like my paper clip is floating, which will be unrealistic. So with an offset of 3 and 3, opacity 80, blur just 3 or 4, color will be black, and the shadow is on a separate layer. At this point, I want to make a selection for that inside loop. Some tutorials suggest that you can erase it, but by erasing it, you limit your options to move and tweak your paper clip. So I prefer a different method. For that, I'm going to edit the selection and use my paintbrush tool. I have just a round shape. Size is about just 10 pixels. That will depend on the size of your paper clip. The hardness is maximum, or you can go down a couple of values. The step is set to 1 and everything else is at default. I want the color to be white because, as you see, when I edit the selection, I get a sort of black mask. So whatever I will paint in white will become a selection. So I will select with my brush the part of the paper clip that I will want to place behind. I will include the shadow if I can, and try to avoid the other side of the paper clip. And I will go a bit higher than the edge of the paper. When I'm happy with the area to be selected, I will toggle it again. And now you can see you have a perfect selection. I'm going to activate the top layer, which is the paperclip layer. Right click, promote the selection to its own layer. Go back to the paperclip and hit the delete key to delete it. So I end up with one part that's going to be behind and one part that's going to be in front. Now, while my selection is still active, I'll do the same thing for the shadow. So right click, promote selection to a layer, go back to the original, hit the delete key. And again, I'll have my shadows, one part for the middle area and one for the larger loop. Since I don't want anything to move at this point, I will select the 4 layers holding the Control key and link them together. So that way, if I move one, everything will move together. I can deselect with Control D. And now it's a matter of moving that small area behind the paper. So for that, I will go to that promoted selection and slide it down behind the gray paper. And I will do the same thing with the promoted selection from the shadow and move it down, making sure it's behind the actual paper clip, because if it's in the front, it will look funny. And now you have your paper clip. If you need to move your paper clip, you can do so. And you have some flexibility, which you would not have if you were to erase that part in the back. Of course, you can't go too high, or mostly you can't go too low, but you can see how this paper clip will look realistically placed to fasten those 2 pieces of paper.